Listen carefully. Most men are not rejected because they are cruel. They are rejected because they are compliant. They believe attraction is a reward for good behavior. They believe if they give enough, agree enough, sacrifice enough, affection will follow. But power does not respond to pleading, and feminine nature does not awaken to submission. In courts and kingdoms, I observed rulers who wished to be loved by all. They forgave too quickly. They compromised too often. They avoided conflict in order to preserve comfort. And in doing so, they dissolved the very authority that made them desirable leaders. The same error is committed in romance. A man meets a woman he admires. Immediately, he adjusts himself. He edits his opinions. He suppresses disagreement. He becomes agreeable not because he is peaceful, but because he fears disapproval. Fear is never attractive. A woman may smile at your compliance. She may even thank you for it. But beneath her gratitude, something else is forming: evaluation. Is this man steady? Is this man grounded? Or is he shifting to secure approval? When you rush to please, you reveal your dependency on her reaction. And dependency weakens your position. Understand this: strength is not dominance. It is not loudness. It is not aggression. Strength is internal certainty. It is the calm refusal to betray yourself for temporary validation. When she disagrees with you, you collapse into apology. When she challenges you, you scramble to explain. When she withdraws, do you chase? These moments are not accidents. They are measurements. Just as a prince is tested by rival states, a man is tested by tension. Not consciously perhaps, not maliciously, but instinctively. A woman seeks security, not comfort, security. And security is found in stability. If your mood depends on her approval, you are unstable. If your identity shifts under pressure, you are unstable. If your direction changes to maintain harmony, you are unstable. And instability cannot protect. It cannot lead. It cannot inspire. Many men confuse niceness with virtue. They think constant accommodation is kindness. But kindness without boundaries is self-erasure. Imagine a fortress with open gates. It may appear welcoming. It may appear generous, but it cannot defend itself. And what cannot defend itself cannot command respect. Strength does not mean you are cold. It means you are centered. When she expresses frustration, you listen, but you do not panic. When she tests your decision, you consider, but you do not surrender your conviction. When she disagrees, you remain composed, not defensive. Composure signals power. You must understand something deeper. Attraction is not logical. It is biological, psychological, ancient. It responds to cues of leadership, to cues of direction, to cues of grounded authority. A man without direction seeks to be chosen. A man with direction chooses. And the difference between those two positions is vast. When you prioritize pleasing her above pursuing your purpose, you communicate something dangerous, that she is your source of meaning. But desire does not grow toward what depends on it. It grows toward what stands independently. Look at the men who are perpetually overlooked. They are available at all times. They answer instantly. They rearrange plans immediately. They abandon personal commitments to demonstrate devotion. They think sacrifice proves value. It proves imbalance. The more you orbit her world, the less she feels the gravity of yours. Strength requires self-governance. If she cancels unexpectedly, you do not rage, but you do not beg for replacement time either. If she disagrees with your stance, you do not escalate, but you do not dilute your position. If she is distant, you do not flood her with reassurance, you maintain your pace. Because your life does not pause for emotional turbulence. This is the essence of strength. It is the refusal to overreact. It is the discipline to remain steady. It is the ability to say no without hostility and yes without desperation. Many men fear that standing firm will drive her away. They believe if they assert boundaries, they will be labeled difficult, stubborn, insensitive. But consider this. If asserting your needs causes her respect to diminish, then your compliance would not have preserved attraction, only prolonged illusion. Respect is the soil in which attraction grows. Without respect, affection becomes temporary. Without respect, passion fades. Without respect, you become negotiable. A man who stands by his word, who keeps his commitments, who does not oscillate under emotional pressure, this man creates psychological safety. Not through softness alone, but through reliability. And reliability requires spine. When you speak, mean it. When you decide, own it. When you commit, uphold it, not rigidly, not arrogantly, but firmly. The paradox is this: the more you seek approval, the less you receive admiration. The more you seek to impress, the less you are respected. The more you chase validation, the more distant it becomes. But when you build yourself, your mission, your discipline, your standards, something shifts. Your time becomes valuable. Your attention becomes selective. Your presence becomes intentional. And intention is magnetic. Strength does not announce itself. It is felt. It is felt when you do not over-explain. It is felt when you do not argue for your worth. It is felt when you remain grounded while others fluctuate. A woman may not consciously articulate it, but she responds to it. Because, at the deepest level, she is asking one silent question: if the world turns chaotic, will this man remain steady? If your answer depends on her mood, then you have already failed the test. Strength is not about overpowering her. It is about mastering yourself, and the man who masters himself does not need to plead for position. You have been taught a dangerous lie. You have been told that emotion is irrational, that it is weakness, that it is instability to be corrected. But observe closely. In politics, revolutions are not born from logic. They are born from emotion. In war, soldiers do not charge because of spreadsheets. They charge because of belief, pride, fear, loyalty. In courts and kingdoms, power is not sustained by facts alone. It is sustained by atmosphere. Emotion is atmosphere. And atmosphere governs behavior. If you misunderstand this, you will forever misread women. When she shifts in tone, when her warmth cools, when she grows quiet where she was once expressive, you assume disorder. You assume confusion. You assume chaos. But often, what you are witnessing is calibration. Emotion is not always a loss of control. Sometimes it is the method of influence. Consider how tension operates. When harmony exists without interruption, complacency grows. But when warmth withdraws slightly, attention sharpens, awareness increases, investment rises. Emotion creates contrast, and contrast creates impact. When a woman becomes distant, most men panic. They rush to restore equilibrium. They overtext. They over-explain. They attempt to negotiate feelings as if feelings were contracts. But emotion is not a contract, it is a current. If you thrash against it, you appear unstable. If you fear it, you appear insecure. If you attempt to dominate it, you appear insensitive. The man who misunderstands emotion reacts. The man who understands emotion observes. There is power in observation. When her mood shifts, instead of immediately correcting, you pause. Instead of defending, you listen. Instead of collapsing into apology, you maintain composure. Composure is rare, and rarity creates value. You must recognize something subtle. Emotional expression often serves as a test of your internal stability. Not a malicious test, not a calculated conspiracy, but an instinctive inquiry. If her emotions rise, will yours rise higher? If she becomes uncertain, will you become frantic? If tension appears, will you lose control? Emotional leadership is not about suppressing her feeling. It is about regulating your own. In every relationship, someone sets the emotional temperature. If you allow her fluctuations to dictate your state entirely, you surrender authority over the environment. Authority does not mean dominance. It means steadiness. When a prince hears unsettling news, he does not scream before the court. He gathers information, he assesses, he responds with deliberation. His calm signals security. In the same way, when she expresses frustration, you do not immediately defend your ego. You seek to understand, you maintain posture, you speak with clarity, not volatility. Emotion becomes influence when it shapes reaction. If her silence compels you to chase, silence has power over you. If her tears compel you to abandon your standards, emotion has leverage over you. If her anger forces you to retract every boundary, you are governed by feeling rather than principle. But if you remain grounded, something shifts. She feels it. Your steadiness becomes an anchor. Your calm becomes a stabilizer. Your presence becomes containment rather than combustion. Containment is attractive because it signals capacity. The capacity to handle pressure. The capacity to endure tension. The capacity to navigate storms without sinking. Many men believe emotional intensity must be matched. They think passion requires escalation. They mirror anger with anger, drama with drama, insecurity with reassurance that borders on pleading. But escalation rarely builds attraction. It builds exhaustion. The strongest position is often the quietest. When she tests boundaries through emotion, she is often asking without words, "Can you handle this? Can you handle me?" If you crumble, the answer is no. Handling emotion does not mean dismissing it. It means understanding its rhythm. Sometimes emotion seeks acknowledgement, not solution. Sometimes it seeks empathy, not correction. If she expresses frustration and you immediately attempt to solve it mechanically, you communicate distance. If she expresses vulnerability and you recoil, you communicate weakness. But if you listen without losing center, if you validate without surrendering self, you demonstrate emotional range. Range is power. A ruler who cannot read the emotional state of his people loses influence. A man who cannot read emotional shifts loses connection. Emotion signals needs, desires, insecurities, expectations. It is data, but it is not chaos. When you treat it as chaos, you become reactive. When you treat it as data, you become strategic. Notice patterns, notice triggers, notice timing. If distance follows overinvestment, perhaps space is required. If frustration follows neglect, perhaps presence is required. If tension follows insecurity, perhaps reassurance is required, but reassurance given calmly, not desperately. Desperation is loud. Confidence is measured. There is a profound difference between responding and reacting. Reaction is immediate, impulsive, ego-driven. Response is deliberate, filtered, intentional. The moment you master the pause between stimulus and action, you reclaim control. In that pause lies dominance over self, and self-dominance is the highest form of authority. Women are often more attuned to emotional currents than men. They sense shifts before words are spoken. They detect hesitation, insecurity, confidence, resolve, not merely through speech, but through presence. If your internal state is chaotic, it will be felt. If your confidence is fragile, it will be tested. But if your composure is genuine, it will be respected. Emotion is influence because it reveals hierarchy, not of superiority, but of stability. Who remains steady when intensity rises, who thinks clearly when tension builds, who speaks with control when conflict emerges, that person shapes the outcome. Understand this clearly. The goal is not to suppress her emotion, nor to manipulate it, nor to outmaneuver it. The goal is to remain sovereign over yourself within it. When you achieve this, emotion ceases to threaten you. It becomes something you can navigate, interpret, and lead through. And when a woman feels that her emotional expression does not destabilize you, when she senses that you can absorb pressure without resentment, Without collapse, without aggression, she relaxes. Because now, influence flows both ways. Now, emotion becomes connection rather than conflict. Now, tension becomes polarity rather than destruction. Now, intensity becomes depth rather than chaos. And you remain standing, not because you overpowered the storm, but because you did not become one man ruin attraction, not through cruelty, but through overexposure. They believe transparency creates intimacy. They believe constant availability creates security. They believe revealing everything proves honesty. But desire does not thrive in total exposure. It thrives in tension. In my study of rulers and republics, I learned that visibility must be controlled. A prince who reveals every intention weakens his position. A general who displays every strategy invites invasion. Power requires measured revelation. So does attraction. When you first meet a woman, curiosity is alive. She wonders who you are. She evaluates your tone, your composure, your rhythm. There is uncertainty. There is possibility, and possibility is intoxicating. But what do most men do? They rush to eliminate uncertainty. They overshare their history. They confess their fears too quickly. They flood her with constant updates. They make themselves entirely accessible, entirely predictable, entirely known within days. And in doing so, they suffocate intrigue. Mystery is not deception, it is pacing. It is understanding that depth must be earned, not dumped. When you reveal your entire emotional blueprint immediately, you remove the journey of discovery. When you make yourself permanently available, you remove anticipation. When you answer every message within seconds at all hours, you remove rhythm. Rhythm creates tension. Tension creates attraction. Consider this carefully. What is predictable rarely excites. What is slightly uncertain commands attention. If she knows exactly when you will call, exactly how you will respond, exactly how you will react in every scenario, your presence becomes comfortable but not compelling. Comfort sustains relationships. Mystery ignites them. The error many men make is believing they must constantly prove sincerity. They attempt to reassure through excess communication. They attempt to solidify interest through constant validation. They believe silence equals loss, but controlled space creates gravity. When you are occupied with purpose, when your life is structured around mission, discipline, and growth, you naturally become less accessible. Not artificially distant, but genuinely engaged elsewhere, and that engagement radiates value. A man with nothing to do becomes overavailable. A man with direction becomes selective. Selectivity signals standards. Standards signal self-respect. Self-respect signals worth. When you revolve your schedule around her entirely, you communicate that your world shrinks in her presence. But when your world remains expansive, when she enters it rather than becomes it, you create polarity. She feels the movement toward something. Mystery is also emotional restraint, not coldness, not indifference. Restraint, you do not pour out every compliment at once. You do not confess intense feelings prematurely. You allow emotion to unfold gradually, proportionate to shared experience. Why? Because premature intensity feels unstable. If you become deeply attached before depth exists, you appear governed by fantasy rather than reality. Fantasy is fragile. Grounded progression builds intrigue. When she senses that there is more to you than what is immediately visible, her imagination engages. She begins to wonder. She begins to invest thought. Investment increases attachment. But when everything is laid bare immediately, there is nothing left to uncover. Mystery also lies in emotional independence. If your happiness fluctuates solely based on her attention, you are transparent in a dangerous way. She can see your dependency, and dependency reduces tension. But if you enjoy her presence without requiring it, something shifts. You appreciate, but you do not cling. You engage, but you do not pursue relentlessly. That subtle difference changes the dynamic entirely. Many men attempt to create mystery through games, delayed responses, calculated silence, artificial aloofness. This is manipulation born of insecurity. True mystery is organic. It emerges from having a full life, from having passions that demand focus, from having boundaries that protect time, from having internal depth that is not immediately broadcast. You do not announce your entire vision on the first encounter. You reveal it piece by piece, as trust and time justify it. You do not expose every vulnerability without context. Vulnerability is powerful, but only when shared within strength. If vulnerability appears before stability, it feels like need. If it appears after strength, it feels like trust. Timing governs perception. Remember this: attraction is a dance between certainty and uncertainty. Too much uncertainty creates anxiety. Too much certainty creates boredom. The art lies in balance. She should feel secure in your character, but curious about your depths. She should trust your consistency, but wonder about your full capacity. When you maintain internal composure and measured revelation, you allow attraction to breathe. You must resist the urge to overclarify. If she asks about your feelings early, you can express interest without surrendering mystery. "I enjoy spending time with you" carries far more power than dramatic declarations. Let emotions build through shared experiences rather than verbal excess. Anticipation intensifies connection. When she looks forward to your presence because it is not constant, when she values your attention because it is intentional, when she senses there are layers yet undiscovered, desire remains alive. But if you become fully predictable, fully available, fully exposed, you remove the spark of pursuit. Even in established relationships, mystery must evolve. Growth creates new layers. Ambition creates new dimensions. Personal development renews intrigue. If you remain stagnant, predictability becomes permanent. But if you are continuously evolving, learning, building, expanding, she never feels she has reached the end of you. And that endless depth sustains fascination. Men often fear losing women, so they attempt to secure them through constant reassurance. Yet security without intrigue dulls excitement. The paradox is this: the more you attempt to hold tightly, the faster attraction fades. The more you cultivate your own world, the more she gravitates toward it. Scarcity increases value not because it manipulates, but because it forces appreciation. Your time should not be cheap. Your energy should not be unlimited. Your attention should not be automatic. When you choose to give them, they should feel intentional. Mystery is not about hiding truth. It is about revealing depth gradually. It is about allowing curiosity to unfold naturally. It is about understanding that attraction requires space to expand. If you are always there, there is no space. If there is no space, there is no longing. If there is no longing, desire becomes routine. And routine without tension slowly erodes the very spark you sought to protect.